Hello, everyone. This is John Byrne with Poets and Quants. Welcome to our session on Fortuna Admissions. We want to talk about why should you hire an admissions consultant and why, in fact, should you hire Fortuna? We have with us the three co-founders of the firm. As you know, Fortuna assembled a dream team of former gatekeepers of the top business schools. They have 40 admissions insiders and 175 combined years of AdCom experience, which is quite a lot of reviews of applications. In fact, they've reviewed over 220,000 applications. They've admitted over 60,000 students. Let me introduce you to the three co-founders, Matt Symonds, Caroline Diarte Edwards, and Judith Hodara. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, John. Great to be with you.
So, Matt, why should an MBA candidate consider Fortuna?
Now, there's a question that we asked ourselves over a decade ago when we launched Fortuna. And I think that decision to build the dream team that you described, former admissions directors like Caroline and Judith, associate deans, associate directors from the world's top schools, really has proved to be irresistible, I would say. Now, business schools love Porter's 5 forces and Kotler's 4 Ps. Forgive me if I get that wrong. I think, why choose Fortuna? There are 3 things that really come to mind when applicants from all over the world choose to work with us. The first is their success, certainly. And helping them to achieve their MBA hopes and dreams. It's not just admissions success. Every year we help a remarkable number of talented people from all over the world to secure places at HBS, Stanford, Wharton, INSEAD, Sloan, Columbia, LBS, all of the top US and European business schools. And that's actually reflected, I guess, in your Poets and Quants ranking of the top admissions firms and so many 5-star rankings. But I think it's also a very personal success and sense of fulfillment, because this whole admissions journey that you go through and that we get to share with our clients, it's an incredible deep drive of their motivations, their unique experiences, their accomplishments, life choices, values, that sense of purpose. And time and time again, they tell us how much they actually enjoyed that journey together and how it's brought them not just offers from these top business schools, but a much better sense of self and what they want from life. So my first one is the S of success. Second, perhaps scholarships and the wider issue of accessibility. From day one, we offer these really detailed evaluations, honest discussions with everybody from all over the world for free. And those consultations, as you know, they're sort of the gold standard for the industry. And I think that reflects the level of commitment and personalized support that then follows. And that has translated into tens of millions of dollars of scholarships for clients in the past decade. And it all starts with a free call and the time that we take and the belief that we have in their potential. So there's number 2. Third, sharing. And by that, that's probably my favorite aspect of our work. So many of Fortuna's clients come from word of mouth, whether it's referred by a colleague, by a friend, by a member of the family who I think very happily shared the secrets of their admissions success and how much they'd loved working with Fortuna. But the sharing also is among our colleagues who bring all of this insider expertise. What did you say, 170 years or more? And the wonderful coaching skills. They share that with their clients. They share that with each other and other colleagues' clients. And this incredible Fortuna Knowledge Center that we built together. So I get to share that every day. And it's why I've been so lucky to share Fortuna with Judith and Caroline and the fact that they have chosen to work with me.
I'm going to add a 4th reason, Matt, and that is this. When you take a long journey and one that could often be filled with anxiety, it's awfully nice to have someone alongside of you who's supportive, encouraging, knowledgeable, thoughtful, and can guide you along the way. And I think having that kind of person makes the journey much more splendid and more fun than it otherwise would be. And hopefully it does lead to a more successful outcome. Now, Caroline, you've been the former director of admissions at NCOD. What's the story of Fortuna? How did the three of you get started? And I remember writing that first story about the launch of the company many years ago.
Yes, yeah, it is many years. The time has flown by. So I started thinking about the admissions coaching business because when I was at INSEAD, I was head of admissions, and we would survey the incoming class each year. And I observed that an increasing number of students each year had engaged with coaches. And so I started looking at who they were working with, what advice they were getting, and discussing with them, how that process had been, and realized that in the vast majority of cases, they had worked with people who were MBA alumni. So most of the admissions coaches out there are MBA alumni who have got into the business because people have approached them and said, okay, you went to INSEAD or you went to Stanford Business School, I'm looking to go there. Could you review my application? And that's sort of the ball starts rolling from there. And I knew that having myself studied at the school and then gone back a few years later to work in admissions, that admissions is a completely different world from being a student and alum at the school. So you don't necessarily know from your experience as a student and as an alum how the admissions evaluation works. And so I realized that people weren't necessarily getting the best advice on how to present themselves. And I would also get questions when I was admissions director from admissions coaches that were pretty basic stuff. And so that kind of raised a red flag to me that candidates weren't necessarily being well advised. And so it suggested that there was a gap in the market. And then a moment of serendipity, Matt and I started chatting about this, and he brought Judith into the conversation. And, it was really one of those wonderful moments where everything came together at the right time, right place. And so that was really the sort of foundational idea of bringing together this team of people who had that understanding of how an admissions committee works, what goes on behind the closed door of admissions. And so over the years, we have been successful in bringing together a team of people who have experience like us from other top schools. And, that has resonated with the market. I think candidates really understand the value of working with a coach who has that insider perspective. And as you said, who can hold your hand through the process and take a lot of the stress out of that. And I think, what is different these days versus when, 20 years ago when I applied to business school, there's just so much information out there. When I applied, it was a very different world. These days, there's kind of information overload on the internet, and there's so much bad information out there, both online and, as I said, from, the advice that you could potentially get people. And so I think that adds to the stress for candidates because it's difficult to navigate through. It's difficult to figure out, what do you need to know? Where do you go for good advice? What is helpful and what is not helpful advice? And so we really work with our clients to sort of cut through that and make sure that, they have access to the information that they need and that they're able to use their time efficiently. So they're not sort of wading through and trying to do all the filtering themselves, that we've done that for them and we're able to provide them with very targeted information. And, our clients are very busy people, right? They have very demanding day jobs. They're juggling a lot of different responsibilities. And so being able to hold their hand through that stressful process and make sure that they're able to use their time efficiently and effectively, I think is something that they found very useful.
Yeah, very true. Don't read Reddit, because if you want your anxiety level to go up, you will go to Reddit and read the boards there, and you will go crazy. Judith, you spent many years in the Wharton admissions office, ending up as acting director of admissions there. Is there, in fact, a Fortuna style of engaging with your clients?
There is. And I think when Matt and Caroline and myself started Fortuna, we really were clear that we didn't want this to feel like a factory setting. We really wanted to develop these relationships that are deep and connected. This is not a transaction, it's a relation, and I think that's really important for the students that come to work with us. It all starts with that half-hour conversation that Matt had mentioned earlier, and this opportunity. And we all, we do a lot of these calls to say, hey, what's on your mind? What's keeping you up at night? That's usually the first question that I have, because you know that everybody's, gnashing their teeth about the C they got their sophomore year in statistics, or, do they really need to reveal that they didn't work for 2 months, right after college, or, all these things. And so for us, it's an opportunity to make them feel like someone is walking that path with them. And not only is it someone, but it's someone who deeply cares, right? We're 100% invested. And so for us to really say to our coaches, we don't want you to have 20 clients around. Like, that doesn't interest us. We want you to have quality over quantity. We want the people that come to us to feel like they're getting your attention, your focus, our support. And we supported a lot of different layers, as you know, with a coach, and then with a director, and then with resume support, and then usually, additional overview. And that's why so many of us on the team got into this to begin with, is that we really care about counseling. We care about success metrics, but more importantly is, how does that journey go? And how is the student feeling along the way? It's a time of transition, the ages between, let's say, 25 to 32. There's so much happening professionally, personally. And so for us, it's a true gift to be a part of that conversation. And I can tell you, we all get a lot of graduation invitations. We get baby announcements, we get wedding announcements. And it's such a joy to be part of that. So for me, when I left Wharton and I knew that I wanted to use the skills that I had developed over my career in higher education, that it was going to be in a way that was very connected, working with folks that had a similar expertise that I did, but also really focusing on the student. And that, to us, as we start to ramp up for next year, I'm like giddy with excitement about these amazing individuals that we've just shepherded through the process successfully. And now we're looking for the September deadlines again. I feel really lucky. And also because I get to work, as I mentioned, with 40 plus outstanding individuals. And I'll tell you just briefly, I saw 2 of them this past weekend in New York. We are a virtual company. It is rare we're in the same place at the same time. You could not get us to stop talking. I mean, 6 hours later, we were just, about our lives, about the industry. And to me, I think that is so wonderful to really enjoy the people that I get to talk to every day.
Now, here's a question for all 3 of you, actually. Is it really necessary to hire an admissions coach? Matt?
Nobody actually needs to go to business school, right, to make a success of their lives. But I think clearly, when you're targeting the top schools, when we look at selectivity, 1 in 18 or 19 at the GSB, not much better on the East Coast. It's a very competitive market, and there are a lot of well-represented pools, whether that's geographically, and certain individuals that need their very high GMAT scores. But I think more than that, as they share these distinct and unique stories, if you're coming from consulting or from financial services or the tech industry, join the queue. There's a lot of you. But you touched on it earlier, this sense of self-confidence. A school like Stanford, on the first day when they welcome everybody to the admits, Kirsten and Will and the rest of the team, they're like, so many people come up to me and said, I just either didn't think that there would be a place for me at Stanford or at business school. So being able to give them that self-belief and structure, I think, is unbelievably precious. The number of people, I think, even on the Poets site that have written, Matt or Mandira or Jennifer, whoever they had the first call with, really believed in me. And I'm so glad that I followed that advice. So, that is starting at the early stages, and then we get to introduce them to our colleagues. And I think that sense of self-empowerment and realizing your full potential, I mean, that's a wonderful, wonderful gift. But I'll hand over to Caroline and Judith on that one.
Yeah, I would just add that, John, when I was at INSEAD, I would sometimes end up rejecting candidates, not because they weren't good candidates, but because they hadn't fully understood what was expected of them in the admissions process, and they hadn't presented themselves effectively. And it's frustrating, right? Because you know that they could be a great student and they could be a great alum of the school, but it's a competitive process, and you can't accept everyone. And so if they have made a poor choice of recommender, or they didn't prepare well for their interview, or something went wrong, then they end up getting rejected. And so that's one of the things that I love about what we do now, is that we take that risk out of the process for the clients that we work with, so that when they submit their application and when they go into their interviews, they know that they've put their best foot forward and they've given themselves the best possible chance, right? I mean, of course, there are no guarantees. It's still a competitive process, but they know that they've given it their best shot. And, having seen from the other side that very good candidates sometimes didn't do that, I appreciate the opportunity to be able to correct that and be able to, help candidates ensure that they really do give themselves the best possible chance, so that, they have the best outcome and they're not left wondering at the end of the day, okay, well, if I had prepared better, or if I'd done something differently, maybe I would have got into INSEAD, or maybe I would have got into Stanford, right? They know that they've given it the best possible shot and they can go to business school with confidence.
Yeah, that's really true. And, every year we often do a story on who Harvard Business School rejected.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at the rejected candidates who are willing to give us their backgrounds, it's shocking how good they are. The pool is incredibly competitive. It's highly selective, and it's self-selecting, right? Because the people who tend to apply are those who actually think they have a chance to get in. So that's a self-selecting group of people who are highly qualified to attend the school and to do well. Judith, your take?
So we really do a lot of work with people on both ends of the spectrum, right? The very strong pools in tech, finance, and consulting. And then people who are like, oh, I've been an opera singer. I want to go to business school. So to me, it's helping the people that are coming from the super deep pools say to me after the first call, oh yeah, there are more interesting things about me than these deals that I close or these clients that I support. Like really getting into what is it about you that is getting you out of bed in the morning? So that's on one end. And then how do you present that in the course of the application? And then on the other end is, the individual that's been a school teacher and a superintendent and now wants to reform online education, the opera singer who sees herself as a leader in the fashion industry, helping to dress people of her body type, which is something she did not have as an opera singer, people that are just transitioning from whatever they're doing and want to see how that applies to business. So I feel like our job, and we were talking about that journey, is really working with the students that, sure, business school is obviously the next move because that's what people 3 years ahead of me are doing in my industry. And then there's those who have nobody ahead of them and have to figure it out for themselves, right? And so I don't think we play favorites at Fortuna, but I personally love folks on both ends of those scales that are looking across the bridge at each other and with a raised eyebrow to say, really? You're thinking about that? And that's where we come in. And so I think, I agree definitely with what Matt and Caroline have said, but I also think that those folks that are in deep pools and really shallow pools in terms of number of applicants, find a lot of use in working with folks like us.
Right. Well, look, if you were the lead baritone in Don Giovanni, or you sang the role of Aaron Burr in Hamilton, or you did anything else or are doing anything else in life and want a free consultation from Fortuna, how can you?
What was it? Our first client was enjoying a very successful career at Tesla after MIT and was a cheerleader for the San Francisco 49ers. And we talk about opera singers. I think a few weeks later, someone that had been nominated for a Grammy. So where do we start? I think both Caroline and Judith mentioned reaching out and having a free consultation, which we take incredibly seriously. I actually had someone, I thought he was in tears almost the other day because he said, you read the resume, the questions that you asked, the time that you had taken. And that perhaps seems natural to us, but that really is how we go into those phone calls. We want them to be incredibly helpful, whatever the next steps that you decide to take. And I'm the only member of our team that doesn't have that sort of admissions depth and background. My colleagues, Caroline and Judith included, are very, very patient with me. But I think being able to really talk deeply with them about where business school fits, those next steps, things already on that first consultation to get them to think about and accomplishments. You know, Caroline talks a lot about reading between the lines. Caroline, that's something that you did a lot, right, at INSEAD. Things that just weren't explicit, and you had to put in that time and effort. So it begins with that first call, and people, I think, really value that.
What can you expect in a free consultation?
Well, typically you've shared your profile with us, or would request a resume. If otherwise, we'll go hunting for your LinkedIn profile. I think the first question is, you know, what would be the most helpful for you for this call? Some people have, you know, very, very set plans in terms of schools they're looking at, asking questions, finding out more, and I think anticipates what the admissions office is doing, you know, looking for patterns, looking for behaviors. Is there something that you were doing at the end of high school or through your college years that now comes back 4 or 5 years later? You know, we'll often identify things or get them to sort of share more. So it's a lot of reflection. And then at the end, it's like, wow, you know, I love this. Sorry. So how does Fortuna work? We really make it about the candidate and their background and what they're hoping to achieve. Because I think, you know, that's really the first step. And then putting them in touch with colleagues to be able to get a sense of the chemistry, because you can imagine what Judith and Caroline are describing, the level of openness and trust that's involved in this journey. So, you know, the chemistry with the coaches really, really matters, I think, you know, to get the most out of it. And then there's a whole methodology, you know, the team I mentioned sharing earlier, what both of my co-directors, co-founders have put together, but with the rest of the team, you know, to take them through each of the different schools and what they're each looking for. And we often say, hey, you know, maybe we start with Stanford or Harvard or INSEAD. We tease Caroline about the INSEAD application. She was responsible for it. So it's a monster. No, there's a lot of essays. And as Caroline reminds, you know, the school really wants to find out about a path that you've taken and choices that you've made. And with that in place, you know, that key narrative, how you could then apply that to Chicago Booth or Sloan or London Business School. So yeah, no, it's we always run over, I think. So be prepared, save yourself an extra 15 minutes, just so that we can really explore all of these ideas and what might be the right next steps for you.
So how can a candidate reach out to you? What's the best way?
Fortuna's website, fortunaadmissions.com. And of course, we host a lot of webinars with you and Poets and Quants. The team provide a lot of great content, you know, that we were talking about how important we felt it was to put out, you know, really accurate, candid, honest information about the whole admissions process. And, you know, Poets is known for the credibility and the quality of all of your reporting. But yeah, fortunaadmissions.com, and just choose a time. We'll try to match you with one of myself or one of our colleagues for that first call.
I know that Matt loves doing these.
He does. And before, Matt did them solo for probably 6 years.
It was a while, right? It was
and there
a
were
while.
thousands. I mean, he has
Times
talked to so many prospective MBA clients. And then now we have this amazing sales team. I do some of them as well, and Caroline. But he was carrying it. And I'm pretty sure that he can single-handedly pick out from the past decade, you know, a number of more than a handful of students that he's talked to that have gone on to very successful lives, professionally and personally.
I went to one of the top schools. They had a big alumni event a couple of weeks ago. It was like walking into a Fortuna event. I saw so many people that we'd worked with, you know, they'd now been through business school, next steps. So John, perhaps a cheeky question, but if you were applying to business school and, you know, I think you'd have a wonderful story to share with the schools. Would you look for coaching guidance, and who would you choose?
Oh, Matt, I would pick you, of course. And I would. I think it's very helpful because I think there's a lot of mystery in applying to a highly selected business school. And because of the self-selecting pool, even if you come from a firm with a lot of MBAs in it, like a consulting firm, an investment banking firm, I think it's super helpful to have someone look over everything that you're doing and basically lead you through that self-discovery phase of introspection that's necessary to really write a thoughtful and meaningful and compelling essay. And I mean multiple essays if you're applying to Caroline's INSEAD, because we do know that applications there are a true marathon. Well, hey, it's been a real pleasure to see all three of you again. Matt, Judith, and Caroline, thank you so much for your insights and your help. And for all of you out there, call them up, ask for a consultation. It's free. And look how charming these three are, just to have a little chat with. Really good.
Thanks for having us, John.
Thanks.
All right, this is John Byrne with Poets&Quants. See you soon.